Welcome to the BG Perform podcast, influencing the highest standard of coaching, one episode at a time.
This is the show for coaches, athletes, and high performers who demand more from their training, their clients, and themselves.
Whether you're coaching elite competitors or everyday people, you'll get raw insights that raise the bar so you can influence the highest standard of coaching in your world. DM myself at BGPerform_ and at Coach Jerry Hayes to work together or learn from the best. This show is part of the Coach RX Podcast Network, a collection of shows designed to elevate the coaching conversation. Find the link in the description below. Now sit back and enjoy our new episode.
Get the fuck out of here.
Welcome back to the podcast. What are you doing?
That's a hell of a start.
It always is a hell of a start. Welcome back to the BG Perform podcast with my co-host, Coach Jerry Hayes. Welcome back. How was the week?
Week was good. Halfway through it, took the bike to work today. Made it home in 25 minutes instead of an hour. California splitting lanes is pretty clutch, so feels good.
Beautiful. Yeah. I love it.
How about you? How was your week?
Soon. It's good. Had a good weekend. Got some good work in. Saw a sunrise at Thatcher Park.
Okay.
It's beautiful. Had some bagels. It was good. Good training. Good work. It's been good.
Yeah, dude, I'm feeling pretty good this week with the training. Going heavy, building up a big sweat. Definitely the most disgusting guy leaving the gym this week, which is great.
I sweat in my sessions. Like my training sessions.
Same,
not me training,
dude. Like
training
to the point where you have to continue to wipe your head.
I always wear a hat, but
yeah, we're so gross, bro.
But we are back with another episode of the BG Perform podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about mistakes that coaches make in their journeys or when they're starting to become coaches. And I think, every coach has that look back and like cringe moment at their early coaching days. I specifically remember one where like a year after I opened my first gym, because obviously I talked about opening my first gym before, but realistically before I opened my gym, I did not have a lot of training experience. Like I maybe trained 2 people before that, like very lightly. It was not like full, like I was interning at a gym. So it was like I was coaching some people, but I wasn't really like fully training anybody. I was just kind of like following the workout and taking people through a workout, which is obviously a lot different than writing the workout, taking them through it and doing all that. But when I first started fully writing workouts, I remember about a year in, I looked back at like one of the first programs I ever wrote and I just almost got sick. And I was like, this is so bad. This is horrible.
I did the same thing with one of my first. I think it was the first program I ever wrote. Dude, the volume was through the charts.
Yeah.
And it was like, because somebody wanted a full body program, and I wrote it, and it was a full body program, but it was not easy at all. It was to the point where it's just like, how am I going to do any of these movements after what I did yesterday? Like, I'm shot. So it was just, it was rough. I definitely had that like nausea build up. I was like, oh my God. They trusted me. What was I doing?
Yeah, well, it's like I think that's the crazy part too. Obviously, people, you're like, wait, they did this, like someone did this or trusted, and like, it's obviously like, in my opinion, I think we both agree. Any workout is a good workout, but I think probably just being harsh on ourselves. But when we really look at our careers as coaches, like everybody has that cringe moment. Like everybody has, or moments, I should say, where we look back and we're like, damn, I wish I knew better, or damn, I wish I didn't do that. Right? I think we all have even those, like at night moments. You remember something you said to somebody or you did to somebody and you get that late night cringe. You're like,
your eyes are closed and you just go. I did that like, I think 2 nights ago. I don't remember what it was, but I was lying in bed and I was like, and then
the worst is like,
me up.
you ever think back when you're at a moment where like you're in a group of people and you say a joke and either no one hears it or like it just doesn't hit and you're just like,
like, well, I'm an idiot. I'm gonna go kill myself. I'll be back later.
That's a huge cringe. Yeah. But yeah, so what I want to talk about today and what we're gonna kind of dive into and discuss is mistakes that coaches make early on in
Mhm.
their coaching career. And I think that there's a lot to be said about this. I think that this isn't to say that early on in your coaching career you're going to like be wrong, but I think the point of getting better is like you look back and realize you made mistakes or you could have done things better. And I think part of this goes into like having this conversation is just like the funny things that come from it, right?
Mhm.
And I think today, like we talked about this a little bit before, Jerry and I, and we were just kind of discussing some of the things that, even ourselves that we've done or even that we've seen inside of coaching. And I want this to be like a practical list. I want you guys to actually look at this and be like, yeah, like that is, I remember when I was through that phase, or maybe you're in that phase right now and just taking it from two coaches who have a little bit more experience now. Like I think together we're almost, hate to say it, but we're almost like 20 years of coaching, right?
I am at what year is it? It's 2025.
I'm about to be
I
9 years.
started coaching in 2018. Like officially started coaching.
Yeah,
I
so
was
we're
like
probably like,
training a few people here and there, like my buddies. Like I'd write stuff for them, but officially in 2018. So we're coming up on 10 years soon.
yeah. So you're
Officially,
about 7, so about 16 years total. It's a long time
yeah.
training. And I think with that experience, obviously comes a lot of these conversations we've already essentially had with ourselves, where we've made these mistakes. And I think when you dive into this, it's not about obviously like going back and harming yourself or like you know being so hard on yourself that you can't get over it. But it's just about realizing and knowing, right?
It's
And
it's
I think
also realizing how far you've come, how much you've learned, and
yeah,
it really puts it in perspective. Like, wow, I've become a great coach.
yeah, and I think this is one of the things, like even in myself, like I remember I've told this story a bunch of times, but like even when you first step in front of athletes for the first time, or you first step in front of like big clients for the first time, and you just kind of like, what that, like, how did I end up here? Like from that first workout to like, helping some of the people I've worked with, and it's just like that realization is like, damn, all right, like this is when it works, and you don't ever realize it, right? But it's like you go or you realize it in that moment, but it's almost like you don't realize it until it happens in front of you. And that's something that goes for many aspects of life. But yeah, I think it's really important. And I think a lot of coaches in today's world, there's so much information out there, and I think that it's so easy to kind of get lost in it and feel like you have to be something that
Mm-hmm.
there's like this huge expectation early on as a coach, and like you need to make these mistakes, right? You need to kind of have these conversations, and you need to be able to go into sessions and write workouts and be judged a little bit, right? And almost like make those mistakes and see, because no one's going to be perfect. And even someone like myself, like at the moment I'm going through like a little programming mentorship where I'm learning from somebody that I really enjoy and look up to in regards to like coaching. And I've been working with him, and it's been awesome. It's been really kind of eye opening and giving me like there's another level to the programming that I have that I want to take. So that's the really important thing, is like as we do this, we're always going to continue to learn, and we might look back at this podcast in 5 years and be like,
Lying in bed, just
hopefully in the same spot. Not the same bed.
yeah, yeah.
Same area. Not the
Yeah.
same bed.
Hopefully, we'll be sleeping together. Hey, did you think of that too? Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. Good night.
The year's 2030. But
Yeah.
so let's start this off. I think there's a laundry list of things that coaches make mistakes for early on. But I think one of the big things early on is language, right? And I think that when me and Jerry were kind of talking about this before, when we talk about language, we're talking about almost like, think about it this way, right? You're coming out of college, you just learned about everything in the human body. You learned about everything between like how a muscle grows, how a muscle gets repaired, how you live, like that type of thing. And you come out and you're like, I just paid so much money for this. You're going to listen to me. And I'm going to tell you everything, the correct terms, the right way.
Sit down
And
for a second.
yeah. Sit down. How much time you got? But you talk about it, and then you kind of have that first moment where you're like, all right, I'm a trainer. I'm going to show them I'm a trainer. And you get that first kind of like blank stare of like, what did you just say to me? Like, what did you just call me? And you're just like, oh man, now I have to explain this in like a dumbed down way. And you kind of eventually realize that like not everybody wants that type of thing, right? And it's not to say that it's bad. It's not to say that it's not important to know that stuff, because there's going to be people. Can you hear that?
Yeah, they're coming for
Damn.
you.
All right, that's so loud. Anyways,
There's
there's
a
going
sexy
to
guy
be
in a black
people-
shirt. He's got a red beard, brown hair, but it's bald now. We can't tell he's not a ginger, but we're coming for him.
I'm not a ginger.
He's not a ginger.
I'm not a ginger.
He's not a ginger.
Anyways, so where was I? So yeah, so when we're talking about language, it's one of those things where we get that realization that language is important and we need to know the right times when to use it. And I think early on, everybody goes through it. We want to prove ourselves. We want to be seen as somewhat of an authority figure inside of coaching. We want to be seen as someone who just knows their shit, knows what they're talking about. And early on, there's only a couple ways to do that, right? It's either, you are, I guess, sell yourself very well, you look a certain way, or you know your stuff. And those things are very, I'm sure there's other ways as well, getting yourself in the right position, learning from the right people. But the main ways is like, when you start to try to prove your worth through language, sometimes it's very easy to overdo it, right? And it's very easy to kind of get lost in the sauce of like the big words and all the scientific stuff. And like, I'm someone who struggles with that too. And I feel like as a coach, a lot of people have related to me because I can give you the science if necessary, but like I personally like to hear the dumbed down version of what it is, right? Because it can be very confusing. And like, even as I'm learning in this new mentorship that I'm in, is like the language he uses is different than the language that I'm used to. So I read like one of the first things he wanted me to do was read a paper, and I read a paper and I was like, what the hell is this? And then he's kind of like explaining it to me. I'm like, okay, so this means this. They're just using that language, and it's more like it's the correct language, but like, when you learn, and again, there's just so many coaches out there that sometimes the language you learn is like their personal language, and it doesn't translate across the board. So it gets confusing. So long story short, language is really important, but we need to know when it's useful and when we just need to kind of like convey the message in a dumbed down way for the average person to understand. And I think that myself, I think that Jerry, we've both had plenty of experiences where, pushing to use language that might not necessarily be right in that context puts us in like almost a disadvantaged position where someone can kind of be confused instead of just being, hey, we're going to squat, right? Or, hey, we're going to bench. It's like, hey, we're going to go max effort strength on our upper, like whatever it might be. And you start diving into the details and you lose somebody completely, right?
Yeah.
And that's not what we want as a coach.
I think one of the best things, like one of the biggest markers of a good coach is meeting them where they're at. So sometimes like I went to a chiropractor once and he was trying to explain something to me and he was like, wait, you know what I'm talking about. And he was like, we want to work in the external rotation here. We want to do this for this muscle. And like, he just went into it and I was like, all right, got it. And he was like, sometimes it's just nice to just say that. And like, I've had clients who have had like anatomy classes, or I've had clients who are in school for exercise science. And I'm like, all right, so you should know what this is, but we're going to do this. And they're like, yeah, we just learned about that. So that's cool. But like, if you're working with somebody in finance, maybe use some type of analogy for finance somehow, right? So like meeting them where they're at as far as their skill set and knowledge, and like using language that can kind of bridge the gap between the high level of coaching that you've been working on and where they're at. It's really easy. And that's where I've gotten most of my compliments. They're like, dude, your analogies help me so much. And that's why like just be relatable.
Yeah, and I think being able to translate is one of the biggest things, because even with the high level athletes I've worked with, it's like some of them are just like, cool, like I don't care, just tell me what I need to do. Yeah, and it's like I like literally, like I've had some of them be like, cool, you can tell your other nerd friends, like just tell me what to do. Yeah. So it's just like for me,
if you keep talking to me, I'm going to give you a swirly.
Yeah. So like that's a serious thing. It's like some people they come to you for a reason, right? Yeah. And this is why it's really important to have other coaches in your circle so you can get that out, because as coaches, we do love, and I promise you're going to get that opportunity. You're going to get that client who's like, hey, I really do want to understand this a little bit more. Or those people around you who just do want to talk science and do want to talk the technicalities of what we do. And when that time comes, do it. You want to be able to have that information. You also want to be able to like understand truly what you're talking about to then explain it to somebody. You just don't want to get caught up to the point that you're confusing somebody and you're throwing someone in a position where they could feel inadequate or they could feel insecure because they're like, I don't even know what I'm doing here. I'm just trying to lose weight. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just being smart about that and really bringing down the ability for someone to digest and understand so that they can complete what they need to get done so they can get the results that they want. Simple as that. Right.
That's a really good point too, because I've been in positions where I'm trying to learn something new and people talk and they use like phrases and words that are so advanced where I'm just like, I don't know if I belong here. And we've talked about that too on the podcast.
Well, I told you about this. I think what it did. I was talking about like a social media thing. I was listening to this guy talk about social media, and I think that's what it was. I was listening to this guy, listen to a video. He's talking about social media. I'm like, what is he saying? Like, this doesn't make any sense. He's talking about all these names and metrics and numbers. And I sat there for a second. I was like, I wonder if this is how someone feels when like they're trying to learn fitness. Yeah. And I was just kind of like, well, I understand those details, but like obviously someone who doesn't understand, and it just gave me like an epiphany type of moment. And this was more recent. This was within the last like 6 months. And it was just kind of one of those things where I was like, damn, like, okay, that really puts it in perspective. And like I said, I've always been someone who really likes to dumb things down, but this was really important for me to be like, all right, like this was like an eye-opening moment where I finally got that like other end of the spectrum where I was like, wow, they're probably saying the most basic stuff. Like when we talk about some of this stuff, realistically, like at the end of the day, it can be summarized into like move, do your patterns, move consistently, eat good food, right? And like a social media guy is probably on the same page, post every day, make sure your content looks okay, give good information, good hooks, good lighting, and they're saying, and you're just lost, right? And really it just needs to be broken down into like those basic forms. But there are going to be people who are like, hey, I want to learn, what does lighting look like? What type of expensive microphone should I use? What type of camera should I use? Like that type of thing. And you want to know the details so you're making the right purchase or you're making the right investment into what it is that you're doing, right? Yeah. Anything to add to that?
No, it's good.
Cool. So next, programming. So I think a lot of the times, and I think there's a couple of things. I think obviously I'm going to bunch two of the points that we had together. Why'd you make that face?
When you said programming, I went,
I was kind of looking at it.
Yeah, when I looked over, you're looking down, and I was like, now I made the joke that no one heard and no one saw. I'm going to leave now. I'll see you guys later.
So we're going to bunch two of these together and it's going to be programming and then too much reliance on programming and not enough on communication. And we'll get to those in a second. So programming in general, I think a lot of people overdo the programming, right? And I think early on, there's a lot of mistakes you make in programming, especially if you don't have experience with people actually doing the workouts. I think sometimes we write workouts and we're like, damn, that looks sick. And then it's like you do the workout and you're like, this doesn't really make sense. Or like the equipment's taken, or I didn't even think about it, but like this person, didn't sleep well last night, or they're halfway through and it's just like taking them too long and they only have 45. Like it's just all of these things could come up, right? And I think too many people get stuck on trying to design like the perfect program instead of just putting something together that works and then fixing and adding and adjusting things as necessary, right? We want to create programs that get results, but we also really want to be cautious of putting people in a bad position where they're either doing too much or even on the other end of doing too little, right? But more often too much early on, where you're writing 5x5 back squat workouts with, rear foot elevated split squats and RDLs, and you're doing a conditioning piece and you're like, yeah, this is going to be sick. And it's like, yeah, it would probably be sick, but like 2% of the population could probably get exactly what they need from that workout. And you don't ever really realize that until either you do it yourself or you have someone go through it and you're like, oh man, okay, that probably wasn't good, or like that wasn't good structure. And then you learn and then you ask the questions, and that's why it's really important, right? And the next piece that goes along with that is like, I think too many coaches rely on the program too much instead of like that communication, right? And we kind of just talked about this with the language. They rely too much on the program instead of being able to communicate with somebody to build that trust and build that vulnerability and build that opportunity for you to actually get to know this person on a deeper level to then make the program suit them better, right? Straight out of the straight out of the gate, if you just go and throw programming at somebody, you it might work, it might not. It really depends, But if you go out and you learn about the individual, you learn about their priorities, you learn about the things that they have going on in their life, this is that is programming, right? It's building something that works for an individual on a level that they're going to get what they need while also fitting into their life. And that's the biggest thing on our end. And I heard this kind of like a while back, but we're not the hero in their story, right? Obviously they're the hero, and we need to place ourselves as, one of those supporting characters, right? And we need to kind of allow them to live their life while we're supporting them and living their life. And I think the programming aspect early on, a lot of coaches make the mistake of the cringe of oh damn, I shouldn't have wrote that. Oh man, that's not a good workout. And you just don't know. Again, you can look at all the workouts you want. And like I said, when you look at workouts online, it's a different story. You're seeing guys who are on drugs, or they're on, they've been lifting for 20 years, or they have capacity past anyone that you might ever know. And they're doing certain workouts, and you might look and say, oh yeah, that looks like a good workout. And giving it to someone who has a year in the gym, or 6 months in the gym, or 3 months in the gym, or even yourself, and you just don't have that capacity, and you end up putting yourself in a position where you injure yourself, or you're not able to complete the workout, or you're able to complete the workout, but it's at an intensity that isn't really doing much for you in the grand scheme of things. And that's where we have to be careful. And we have to not only rely on building great programs, but communicating as well, and making that communication the main factor, so that programming can become an art. And I think I want you to add to this as well. But to me, I've really realized lately that programming is obviously our creative outlet, right? And it's what we do in our careers, and it's our painting, it's our music, it's whatever you want to call it. And we need to treat it as such. And we need to continue to adapt and update and, learn new methods. But at the end of the day, we want to build something that works for people. And if we have that and we can get that, that's great. But we don't have to put so much weight on it that it's the only thing that matters.
Yeah, I think that when you put too much effort into not too much effort into programming, because obviously you want to put effort into the programming, but when you put so much emphasis on the programming, you almost lose the bigger picture. Because obviously you want to be able to give them something that's going to help them hit their goal. Like Brandon said, you're not the hero of their story, right? So when you're building a program, and let's say I send it out to a client and I'm like, yeah, this program's sick. Oh, what's that? They got hurt at work. Now we have to change a few things. So like Brandon said, be adaptable, be able to change things, being able to change things on the fly, but keeping their goal in mind is a skill that has to be acquired as a coach. Because yeah, okay, they kind of tweak their lower back. I'm going to move this exercise and swap it out for this one. Is that a good swap, or am I just doing something to kind of replace a movement just to replace a movement? So when you're doing all these things to kind of supplement especially online, when you're supplementing the absence of you being there by the constant communication, you have to be spot on. And even in person, adapting on the fly is good too, and it's an important skill to have, but especially online, when you're not in front of them, you can't see all their movements if they're not sending it to you, that type of thing. It's really, really important to keep the bigger picture right up front and say, okay, how does this movement being taken out affect their goal? How can I put this, one of these endless amounts of movements in here to keep the same goal for the day, but also help them reach something that could be progressed over time to reach their overall goal in a few weeks, months, years, etc. So that's the biggest thing, is making sure that when you are adapting to those situations, that you're keeping the bigger picture in mind.
Yeah, and I think that's again, that's what we're aiming for here. It's just that it's not that the programming isn't important. It's just that we want to understand that it's not the end all be all. And realistically, at the end of the day, it is the icing on top of the cake, and it's, I don't want to downplay it, because obviously the program is very important, but we need other aspects in our life to make sure that the programming gets done effectively. Right. Mm-hmm. And I think too often coaches rely too much on the program, and it's hey, I wrote this, they're spending 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever, on a single workout, and then they're going into the gym and realizing, oh man, like this isn't a great workout, or there's something wrong with it, or the client doesn't like it, or they're just not responding the way that I wanted them to, and that's it. And you have to make those changes. And I think, again, communication needs to be the single most important thing, and then the programming can be built off of that and then led into the results that somebody wants and the things that they need to get from that. Right? Anything else to add to that?
Not sure what you said at the end, but I bet I agree.
Okay, cool.
Sorry, I had to go handle something.
No, it's okay. So from there, I think what is another thing that we kind of mentioned is planning and prioritizing. I think that a lot of coaches do a really bad job at planning early on and prioritizing what actually needs to be done. And I think it's mostly from experience, like a lack of experience. I think that when you really learn like what people are doing inside of their program and what they need, it's very easy to see like the things that we need to prioritize. I think early on, when you don't have a lot of structure, you maybe don't have a great assessment or a great intake form, you're not really sure what to ask or when to ask, there's a lot of things that might like slip through the cracks, whether it be the amount of time somebody has to work out, the days per week that somebody has to work out, the like, do they have kids, what kind of job do they have, what's their nutrition like, and we end up prioritizing the wrong things, or just like I said, not prioritizing anything at all, and just kind of like having a random kind of forward motion of what we're doing, right? And I don't think that's like, sometimes general is great, and I think at some points general is perfectly fine, but I do think we want to have some end goal for the person that's in front of us. Granted, they are in like an individualized setting, but even in like a group setting, we want them to show some type of improvement, whether it's body improvement, whether it's mental improvement, physical capacity improvement, whatever it is. We still want to show that we're prioritizing pieces that are going to make each person in front of us better, right? And I think the planning aspect is like, I think a lot of, and I don't know, I've had really bad experiences seeing coaches not plan properly, or if they are planning, it's like really poor planning, like very, very poor planning, where it's not, like for example, I build out programs like weekly, right? And for the most part, I'm sitting down for, whatever extended amount of time for each individual, and looking at what's going on and seeing what changes might possibly need to be made based off of what they're doing. And if it's looking good, it's fine. But, for example, if someone's saying, hey, I did 30 pounds last week, but I can only do 20 pounds this week because it hurt. It's like, all right, we got to either see what's going on or make changes, right? And I think too many times coaches, I've seen it where they're either not planning, or they're having information and then not making the proper adjustments because they're not making the time to like go through and look at the programs and make adjustments. And that's something I struggled with early on in programming. I wasn't going back enough and reviewing. And now it's just something that is like such a big part of what I do because it's so important, right? Like writing the workout is a good fun part, but we need to be able to keep up. We need to be able to plan, like, what is it that we're trying to achieve, right? With those priorities that we have. And then we need to basically lay out that plan for somebody and let them execute on it. But if our plan is horrible and we don't have our priorities straight, you're going to struggle. And I think a lot of this is just experience early on, because I think as a coach early on, when you have conversations with people, that in the beginning, they're very much like I'm sure you've had this, but like, I think a lot of people, when you have that initial conversation, are like, yeah, I'm ready to do this, and like, I got the time, I got the money, I got whatever. And they're like, okay, cool. Like, this is going to be a great client. And they end up not showing up to sessions. They end up cutting it late. They end up, hearing things or reading things, and they're like, oh, I changed my mind on what I want to do. Just an experience lately. Anyways,
Yeah.
and I think a lot of those things, when you dive into it, it's just it becomes an issue when you don't have the experience to be like, I've heard that before, or I've seen someone say this before, or most people are like this. So, all right, I hear you say that, but let me ask this question next, right? It's like, great, you have time. You want to lose 25 pounds, right? It's like, that's great. I'm happy. I'm excited to help you. Let's talk about, what's going on in your life? What's work looking like? Oh, well, I work 12 hours a day, 4 days a week. And, my sleep's kind of off because I work overnights and like I have kids and then I got to bring them in the day. And it's like, okay. So like your 4 days of the week are probably basically off in regards to training. So it's like, okay, so we have to figure out the pieces here. Like, what are the things that we're going to implement? When are we actually going to train? What's the nutrition going to look like? Your sleep is going to be off because you have like a day schedule, but you have a night job. So there's probably going to be some days you get no sleep whatsoever and you're going into work and then you have to wake up and bring the kids, or you're getting out of work and you're going right into like your mom duties or your dad duties or whatever it might be. And that's really important to know. And if we don't ask the right questions because we don't have the experience, we're going to miss that whole thing. And then we're going to write a whole program. And then we're going to be like, damn, like we're not able to get results. And it's just like, no, like maybe the program was great. It was perfect, but you just didn't ask the right questions. Right. Mm-hmm. I think that's really important for someone to plan and prioritize properly. And that comes with experience of being able to read people and look back on situations where like, oh, I remember the first time someone said this to me. And this person's kind of saying the same thing. What are the odds that this might be the same situation? Let me dig a little bit deeper. Or, you'll get the person coming in and they're saying one thing and then they're not doing the other. And you're like, okay, how can I adjust this? Because maybe sometimes it's like someone says something, right? And they're like, hey, I want to lose weight, but I'm working the overnight shift, right? It's like, okay, well, we have to be really conscious of that and be aware so that we can build around this. And it's as simple as getting ahead of it and just asking and getting ahead of it so you can put the things in place that work and help. But a lot of coaches, again, they just don't do it because they haven't had the experience or had to have that conversation.
Yeah, I would say that was very well said. I don't really have much to add to that one specifically. Obviously, despite experiencing some of these things recently, but I think that no matter what, just having, again, the bigger picture in mind and sticking to it. And then if you need to adapt, you can adapt, but just constantly have their goals in mind and try to make the best informed decision that you can make for their training.
Beautiful. And I probably should have put this one with the first one we talked about. I swear I have like nose hairs and like my mustache hair is like pushing on my nose.
Up. Dude, I have a couple
I just
mustache
don't want you guys
hairs
to think I'm on anything,
Yeah.
I'm like itching playing with my nose hair.
So we're gonna talk about some stuff real quick.
But I probably should have put this one with language early on, but cueing is a huge thing. And I think that cueing in coaching early on, it's very common to just over cue. Like I really think it's probably one of the worst things I've seen inside of coaching, where we don't know what to cue exactly. So we just start shouting cues at people and it's very overwhelming. And I even sometimes fall victim to this on occasion, obviously not as much now because I have a lot of experience with it, but there are some situations where I see things and I try to do it or shout it out in the moment where it's actually like, it's real cues, but like just the timing of them aren't the best. But I think early on what happens is we start to cue things just because we feel like we need to cue, right? And I've turned into a coach, and I've never really been someone who's very vocal as a coach, like especially when someone's doing something, unless it's like, like you got to stop or that's really bad, like, I'll cue it. But for the most part, I like to watch what's going on before I say anything, ask some questions, and then give feedback, right? But I think a lot of times in coaching, people kind of look at coaching as like, all right, well, I'm a coach, so I have to correct something, right? And they'll be in a session and they're like, just saying things like push up, knees out, and like they're just not the right cues at the right time for people. And I think that like cueing is just as much an art as programming, like understanding how to properly and efficiently cue someone on movement so that they're moving better or improving movement or understanding movement inside of a movement, right? And what I mean that is like you're going and talking about a movement pattern and someone's fixing the movement pattern while they're doing the movement pattern, right? And that is very difficult. And you have to be very efficient. You have to be very in tune with who's in front of you and how they like to react. Because again, this is another thing where, you as a coach, you may have learned in for example, a lot of college coaches, right? They'll come from the college atmosphere in like that strength conditioning setting. and a very loud, aggressive, straightforward cueing, right? So you might get these, oh, put your just up, like that type, like almost drill sergeant-esque cueing. And you're going to walk into a regular gym and do that, and people are going to be like, what? Like, I don't feel comfortable at all.
Who the hell invited this guy?
Why are you spitting on me?
Who's the guy just grinding his teeth and pulling on his nose?
Well, no, seriously. Like, and I think a lot of these coaches, they come from the college setting, and they don't know how to properly communicate and cue with somebody. Yeah. And it's really important to understand the language, understand what people need and when they need it. And again, just being efficient, understanding like, hey, what is the most important thing I'm looking at right now inside of this movement that I need to cue? Let's attack that first, and then let's kind of move down the chain. And if there's something that we need to talk about, we'll talk about it after. And in the movement, if there's something that you see that is continuing to happen, I think something that kind of Jerry brought up for another thing earlier is like giving some type of feedback that they understand what they're listening to, right? Mm-hmm. So if it's like, hey, they're going in on the bench press, and their elbows, every time they bench, they're flaring out like this, right? And it's like, don't be a chicken or something like that, where it's like you're shouting it. Yeah, bend the bar.
External cueing.
Yeah, like something that they're gonna hear and be like, elbows, right? Mm-hmm. Not, internally rotate those, like something like that, where
Depress
it's so
your scapula.
Yeah, and they're just kind of like, I am depressed. What are you talking about?
That's why I'm here.
So that type of thing, where
they go to therapy and they're like, so how was your week? Well, my coach is just bullying me for being depressed all the time. You're like, it sounds like he's the problem. You should fire that guy.
But seriously, and like that.
Wait a minute, is that the same guy who grinds his teeth? Yeah, fire.
That's so funny. That's so funny. But so I think learning the proper cueing and learning the ways to communicate efficiently with somebody it's so crucial to success, and learning those little pieces where you can get very efficient inside of it, so they understand and they listen and they know what to tweak, as opposed to having to shout out all these big terms that someone's going to have to digest while they have weight on their back, and then take and try to translate and go from there. Like I used to have a couple fighters that I would train, and they were obviously foreign, and they were from Brazil, and they spoke okay English, but it wasn't great English. And one of the things when I used to cue them, and this is when I really learned that I had to like slow down, as I'm saying things in English, and I'm like, fix this, like, chest up, whatever. And I had one of the girls pull me aside. She's like, listen, you're an amazing coach. I think you're awesome. She's like, but when you speak in English, I have to take your English, translate it to Portuguese, then translate it back from Portuguese into English, and then think about what you said and respond.
Yeah, that's tough.
And I was like, wow, okay, I actually never thought about that. She was like, it's not that I don't want it. She's like, I just need it in like a way that like, I just need you to understand, like, that's the thought process I have to go through every time you cue me. And I was like, that makes a ton of sense. And I was like, so I need to be a little bit more efficient on how I'm cueing, when I'm cueing, and what the pieces are that I'm actually saying, or just learn Portuguese. But
just go out
at the time, Portuguese. A little bit hard.
Figure it out.
But, I think that was such an eye-opening experience for me, because I had to be better. I had to be more efficient. So her specifically, like, she could understand what I was saying and then translate it, but also get what she needed in that moment to make sure she was staying safe and completing the movement.
I think one of my favorite things about all the external cues that I use is, one, they're really memorable. Like, I haven't created my two favorites that I use. Like, I got them from other coaches, but they work wonders. So like when you're teaching somebody a hinge and they're squatting too much, or they're rounding their back and their butt is kind of like pointed down, shoot the bullet out of your butt, hit the wall behind you, not the floor. So like, I was training someone in Denver, and she couldn't get the hinge. She was trying to RDL, she couldn't get it. And I was like, all right, it's a really weird cue. Got to bear with me here. It's going to work. And she was like, okay. I was like, imagine you're shooting a bullet out of your butt. And she goes, what? And I was like, bear with me. I was like, you want the bullet to hit the wall behind you, not the floor. When you're rounded, it's hitting the floor. She goes, and she did it. She goes, oh my God, I feel it in my hamstring. I was like, you're doing it. Shoot the bullet. So it got to a point where like we were on deadlift testing week, and we were doing something, and then the accessory was RDLs, and she was across the gym, and I just went, and she goes, and immediately fixed it and went down. I was like, and then she just like nodded her head, and then her friend that she brought in that day was like, why did he just shoot like in the air? And she like explained it, and then that just created a good laugh. But it's one of those things, like, she'll remember that forever. Shoot the bullet.
Of course.
And then the other one is like for kettlebell swings, left knee, right knee, keep it closer to your third knee. So if I say third knee, like, my clients will know, like, oh, the kettlebell swinging too low, you got your left knee, right knee, weenie. Keep your hands closer to your weenie when you're doing a kettlebell swing. So those things, I'll be like, third knee, and they'll be like, oh, and they'll fix it if they're reaching too low. So like, we almost build our own language that it's something that they'll remember forever. They won't mess up that movement. So
yeah, I think that's really important. And again, a lot of this stuff is experience. Like, you have these conversations and you get it, and like, you say the same cue over and over again, and then something clicks, and you're like, oh, okay, let me try that with the next person, and it might work. And then there might be another person who's like, it doesn't really still make sense. You come like, it's just experience, right?
Yeah. Like, all right, don't shoot a bullet.
Don't do that.
Don't do that.
So next, I think we have like 3 more. So next, I think this is, we'll talk about this one quick, because I think it's, we'll go into these 2. So I think too much education is one. I think too much education in the fact where we continue to learn from like everybody, right? I do think it's important at some point that, actually, we'll put these together. I think we can put these together. Too much education to the point where you stop having original thoughts, right? Or you're just taking stuff from people and just using it without ever actually giving yourself an opportunity to learn or expand on it in a way that like you can create thoughts or theories or ideas. And it's really important to take new information and learn new information as much as you can, right? And more like, I think the most important thing is instead of continuously like going down the rabbit hole of like education, I think challenging thought is something. And this is why the Coach Connect, this was like such a big piece for me when we made this, was challenging thought as opposed to like learning new things. Because we all have things in our head. We all have experiences, thoughts, biases, whatever it might be. I mean, me and Jerry have these conversations probably weekly about random stuff that comes up, whether it's, things we see or things that we read or whatever happens in the world. And we kind of challenge each other's thoughts all the time, right? And it's not a bad thing. And I think one of the things in today's world is like challenging thought is kind of seen as like a negative. And I think you obviously, you got to be careful about who you're around and when you have those conversations, but challenging thought in a lot of ways, that should be the goal, right? And I think too many people get confused with like education being like continuing to like, I don't want you to stop being a student, but like at some point you've done enough courses, right? At some point you got enough education where like, everything that you need to know. Now let's like go put it to use, right? Because I've heard it explained at one point was like information hoarding. Was like at some point you're just getting a bunch of information that like you don't really need it anymore. It's not really that important to like leveling up your career, especially if you're someone who's like, I'm working with like middle-aged moms, right? Or I'm working with moms who are just trying to like get better. It's like you probably don't need to really learn about energy systems or the next wave of, weight cutting or whatever it might be. It's like you probably have all the information you need. Invest in yourself, invest in your clients, invest in, the things that you need to grow that client base, and don't worry so much about doing another course, right? And I think that kind of goes into the other thing, which I said is just like, I think too many coaches nowadays, they don't give themselves time to actually have like original thoughts or ideas or theories. And
especially with social media.
Yeah, and I think
or
it's
they're
hard.
afraid to have an opinion that's different from other people because then they get trashed online by such and such person with so many followers.
Yeah, and I think I heard it described a while back too by Damon John, who's like one of the sharks on Shark Tank, which that like nowadays, like you're not going to reinvent the wheel, but like you can make the wheel a little bit better. Like there's definitely things that you can add on top of it, but that takes time and takes a real, what's the word I want? Like leap of faith to trust yourself enough that you have experience or you have the, I guess, confidence to go out there and say like, hey, I have something that I think is new or original, or I just want to try it and I think it would be cool. Whether it's a new movement, it might be a new system, it might be a play on an old system, right? But whatever it might be, like give yourself time to actually like explore and say like, I feel like this might work. It might not be right, but it doesn't mean it's a wasted effort at the end of the day. Because if you think about it, like every time you try something new, I try to tell people this all the time, at least at the end of the day, you know what you shouldn't do anymore. Like that's the biggest thing is like, yeah, it might not have been a move in the right direction, but at least you know what you're not going to do again. Right. And that's the biggest thing for me is take time to mess up, make, programming mistakes, language mistakes, cueing mistakes, planning mistakes, like everything we've talked about, and give yourself time to just think about it, reflect, and then see where you can go from there.
A lot of it comes down to confidence too. Like if you're continuing to learn just because you don't believe that you can do what you have the knowledge to do, and you're not really, like you said, you're information hoarding, you're not really using it, that's a problem too, because I guarantee if you're in this situation and you're just continuing to try and learn before you go out in the field, you're never going to get out in the field because you're always going to continue to learn. You're never going to be a perfect coach immediately, and you're going to learn the most about coaching when you're coaching, not when you're leading up to coaching. And it's the same thing, like they say the same thing, like for content creation, YouTube, the way the algorithm works with like Instagram and socials. Like if you're just waiting for your content to be perfect to post it, you're never going to post it. You're never going to grow. But if you just start putting stuff out there, people will find you. They'll come your way. It's the same exact thing with coaching. You may not be the perfect coach right away, but you're not going to be unless you start working with people and learning practically, using practical knowledge and experience.
That's it. And I honestly, I think most of the time people with practical experience and knowledge tend to, I don't want to say always, but like they tend to be great coaches. And I think like if you look at some of the best coaches now, like they have education, they have a very good background knowledge of what they do, but they have confidence in the fact that if they believe something, they're at least going to give it a shot. That's all.
A lot of it
and
comes
I think
from
a lot
just
of
doing
times,
the thing. A lot of coaches were athletes themselves.
Yeah. And I think like Jerry said too, it's like being able to kind of like go out on a limb and trust that, what you're saying has some merit. And if it doesn't, at least you tried. That's all,
Yeah.
And the last two things I think are more because of the times. And I think because of where people are coming from. I think the first one we'll talk about is trying to transition to athletes too soon. I think that there's such a misconception that training athletes is like the gold standard inside of what we do as coaches. I truly think athletes provide us something that we don't normally find inside of normal training, which is like hyper fixated goal orientation, right? Like people who are so fixated on a goal or an event or a thing that it makes things easy. It's like, hey, they have a purpose, I have a purpose, and there's a lot more intent behind what you do, right? But I think that there's something to be said about training the average person and having to work with someone whose life does not revolve around fitness and does not revolve around the gym, right? Or their sport. And I think you learn so much from training. And I personally owe my successes in coaching to my first gym, because like it gave me about 70 to 150 people, like depending on, if we're counting, people who tried out the gym, whatever it might have been, there's probably, thousands at this point, like in my life. But coaching normal people and giving them fitness, it helps you so much. It puts you in a position where you have to really think about what you're doing, right? And you have to have the right progressions. You have to have the right regressions. You have to have the right sets and reps. You have to make sure that it's fitting into their lifestyle, because again, their lives don't revolve around fitness, and they aren't waking up and breathing and eating, sleeping fitness, right? That's not what they do. So it's like you're giving them, your version of what fitness should look like in their lens and in their language, and doing all the things that we talked about today. And I think that people come out of college and they just transition into athletics, and athletes are athletes for a reason. They adapt very well. They're very athletic. They have things that intangibles that you can't really teach and you're not going to find in the average individual. So programming for them is very different, right? And that's why on Instagram you can see a lot of athletes doing crazy things and like getting away with it, because that's what they're good at. They're literally good at adapting on the spot to the stimulus that's given to them. And a lot of the times they're at such a high level in regards to like output in their sport that everything outside of that is just supplementary, right? So it's not to say that like there is nothing wrong you could do, but with a lot of these guys, as long as you're keeping them healthy and able to stay on the court, it could look like a lot of things, right?
Yeah.
And I think that when we look at this from a perspective of like what a coach should be doing, they should be aiming to train as many general client population as they can early on in their career, as long as they can, right? One, because it does pay the bills. Like I've had experience with these top level athletes, and very few of them value strength conditioning to the point where they want to pay you, right? Enough to have like a normal life. And if they do, it's like I just did, which was like you have to travel with the person or live with the person. It just gets old very quick. And I think that like even in that setting, it's not to say that it's not worth it, but I think transitioning to athletes is it's a lot of glam, and you have to be ready for a lot of the baggage that comes with it, right? And I think with the general population is like you're actually around people who you're making a huge, significant impact in their life in one way or another, and you're still making impact in the athlete's way one way or another. But I don't think you're ever going to fully express the athletic level until you train a general population person who's just trying to be healthy. Because at the end of the day, even the athletes, they are human as well. There might be, a very athletic and explosive and strong version of a human, but they move the same, they look the same, they talk the same, that type of thing. So you really do need to understand what it looks like to train an average person, and then you add from there. Because really, at the end of the day, at bare bones, like they're going to have the same limbs, same muscles, same that type of thing. They're just expressing them differently.
Yeah, the one of the most important things with working with general population is the challenges that come with it. And a lot of the people will have the same challenges, whether it's their shoulders, their hips, their knees, whatever, their back. And athletes, I want to be careful with how I phrase this, because it's not that it's easy, but like Brandon said, you could do almost anything and it'll be fine with an athlete as long as they're able to perform. Where it's easy until it's not. They get an injury, and now you got to be like, oh, well, have I seen this before? I've only worked with like really high level individuals. I haven't really gotten hurt. How do I get around this? When if you're working with general population, like an injury happens, like maybe at work or at school or even in the gym, they get injured, and you're like, okay, I've seen this happen like 6 different times in my time in training. It's worked for 4 out of the 6 people. Let me try it on this person, see if it helps. So like the experience that you get while working with general population, you see a lot of the same styles of they're susceptible to the same type of injuries, but athletes are too. And not to say that like injury is the only reason why you would want to work with general population. It's one of the most rewarding things because, like Brandon said, you're helping them live a better life. I've worked with a lot of people, and I'm sure Brandon has too, where they come to you and they're like, dude, I just don't want to be in pain anymore. Like, I can't do anything without pain. And then you work with them for a few months, and they're like, I am living life better than I thought I ever would again. I feel like I'm able to actually do things. I can play with my kid, or I can go on hikes and do the things that I used to do when I was in college but wasn't able to since. So there's a ton of reasons to work with general population, from being rewarding to helping you with more experience or whatever it might be. But in order to work with athletes, like Brandon said, you really have to understand the human body, and to understand the human body best, you have to work with the people who don't move the best, or they might not have the genetic gift or time in the gym to allow them to move as well as these athletes do. And it really puts it in perspective, like, not how lucky to say that the athletes haven't worked for it, but how lucky they are that they're in the position they're in, that they could do almost anything and perform well. Well, you have Susie Q over here who can't even pick a laundry basket up off the floor. So a lot of like my experience with general population has put me in a position where I can work with pretty much anybody and feel extremely confident in that position.
Yeah, and I think even like when the first time I worked with some of the biggest names I've worked with, it's kind of like this surreal moment where you're like I've said this before, but like, you know, you're standing in front of Amanda, for example, two-time, or, you know, the champ, like basically the best women's fighter of all time, and you're just kind of like, all right, what the, like, I remember the first time I walked in, I was just kind of like, all right, I need to like take a second, because I was a little bit nervous, and I was like, I want her to enjoy what I'm doing, I want her to have a good session, but I was like, I want to stand out. And I was just kind of like, I took a step back and I was like, no, like, she's a person. She's got some stuff going on at the time. And like, I need to treat her as if I would any other person. And that's what resonated with her. Like, I remember one of the first conversations we had was just like, I got to know her a little bit. I asked her questions. We ended up having the same birthday, like that type of thing. And then it was just like, hey, she was like, I was really appreciative of you, of not trying to like run me into the ground early on. Like, you know, like really appreciative of you to like actually listening to what I had going on and just taking it slow and allowing me to like learn and just start over and not be like, oh, you're an athlete, you have to do X, Y, and Z because you're an athlete. Right. And I think that's a real big mistake, that people just don't have the experience of what it looks like to not be an athlete. And they're training people like that year round, when that's just not where you want to be, especially in a fight sport, to be successful and healthy, like in a year round sport, like fighting. Right. Anything else to add to that?
Nope.
Cool. Last thing, I think this is just, again, a part of the times. I think a lot of coaches are trying to transition to online too soon, right? And I think, just like I said with the athletes, like, you need to be having at least, like, I would even say minimum 2 years inside of a gym training people on the floor before you can think about training online, if you want to do it the right way. If you're just trying to like run some program, $20 a month type thing, I guess you could do it. Like, you know, it would make sense. But like, if you want to do the type of coaching that like myself or Jerry does, or like other high level coaches that are doing like individualized training online, you really need to have experience in the gym to communicate. You need to have experience in the gym to see what movement looks like, what good movement looks like, what bad movement looks like, what language you need to be using, what cueing you need to be using, what, you know, how you plan something, how you prioritize something, all of
To
this,
literally
right?
anticipate how that person is going to move based on the movement assessment that you did.
Yeah. And
That's
it's
one of
going to be,
the hardest things to do.
and you're going to like literally, like Jerry, like, you have to anticipate what someone's going to do, and then respond and build something in a way that, if you don't see it, they're going to be able to, and you're not there, right? And they're going to understand and be able to execute the movement as if you were there. And this was something Jerry mentioned early on in this episode. And that's what it is. And I think you don't get that unless you're in person with somebody for an extended period of time, and know how to communicate and how to write program and how to organize it, how to plan things, how to prioritize, all the things we talked about today. Right. And that's why I left this one till last, because all of that stuff is so important in new coaches' careers. And you need all of that to even kind of consider building something online, unless you're super good at marketing, or, you know, whatever it might be. So I hope that makes sense. And I'm definitely not saying don't go online. I don't want you to,
Don't be discouraged.
wow, my
Oh.
whiteboard just fell off. Sorry about
Somebody
that.
shot the bullet over there. That's what that sounded like.
Don't be scared. My whiteboard just fell off the wall. But yeah, I don't want anybody to get confused and kind of ignore the fact that, like, yeah, online is a great space for someone to be in. I just want you guys to also understand that you need to be prepared, you need to be ready, and you need to have the experience to actually give someone something that is valuable, and really just in a way that they can get results without missing out on the things that you know, they might not get with you being there.
That's perfect.
Anything to add to that?
No, sir. That was great.
Shit just fucking collapsed off my wall. I gotta see what happened there.
You went like this.
I just heard.
I thought that was something in the house somewhere else. I didn't think it was right next to you. It sounded distant.
Right, yeah, I have to.
It sounded loud but distant.
It looks like all the straps fell off. I was using command strips, so.
Oof. You got to command them to stay up there a little bit longer.
I command you to stay. CT Fletcher.
CT Fletcher. That's a name I haven't heard in a while.
I command you to grow. Used to do
Is
100.
that what he used to say?
Yeah, I used to say that to his muscles. I command you to grow.
A fellow nerd, dude.
What
He's just
a
sitting there like,
time.
bro.
What a time.
That was a
Rich
good time. That was a good
Piana,
time
CT
for YouTube.
Fletcher, Simeon Panda. I wonder what happened to him. I have to check him
Yeah,
out.
buddy.
Oh, Ronnie Coleman. Did you ever see that? Did you see that meme I shared on Instagram recently? With it was like it was a clip from a movie, and it was like when your son turns like 14 and you start hearing this in his room, and it's like a guy
he's just
crying, like,
shedding
yeah, buddy. This is so fucking
just
cool.
so happy.
That's gonna be me.
Yeah.
I'm gonna play as soon as my kid comes out of the womb. I'm gonna be introducing him to Ronnie Coleman.
Giving him a bottle, and you're just gonna point him toward the TV with Ronnie Coleman.
Just throw protein in the first bottle.
Throw a little creatine. It's no big deal.
I appreciate you guys for tuning in. If you guys have any thoughts, questions, comments, or you're a new coach and you want to talk about this a little bit sooner, please hit us up. If you are in the Albany area and you are interested in the Coach Connect, leave a message and we can talk. That's an application/invite only event. So if you guys do want to come, we're having our next meeting on August 6th. And I think that's it. Don't think there's anything else for you.
Nothing else for me. Just keep on keeping on. Be strong.
Keep on keeping on. We're at an hour. So we will end it here. I appreciate you guys, and we will see you guys next time. Peace.